The air in the studio was electric, a palpable tension simmering beneath the surface as the camera zoomed in on the iconic set of The View, where the hosts sat poised, their smiles masking the storm about to erupt. Today was no ordinary episode. The guest was none other than Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, stepping into the lion's den of daytime television to discuss his life, his choices, and the whirlwind of controversy that had followed him since stepping back from royal duties. The audience, a mix of loyal fans and curious onlookers, buzzed with anticipation, their whispers filling the room like static. Sharon Osbourne, known for her razor-sharp tongue and unapologetic demeanor, sat among the hosts, her eyes glinting with a mix of curiosity and challenge. She'd made no secret of her opinions on Harry and Meghan in the past, and today, she seemed ready to unleash. The segment began innocently enough, with Whoopi Goldberg steering the conversation toward Harry's work with the Invictus Games, his mental health advocacy, and his new life in California. Harry, dressed in a tailored navy suit, spoke earnestly about his desire to make a difference, his voice steady but tinged with the weight of years spent under public scrutiny. The hosts nodded along, offering supportive murmurs, but Sharon's posture stiffened, her fingers tapping rhythmically on the table, a telltale sign she was itching to interject. As Harry recounted a story about his children, Archie and Lilibet, and the joy they brought him, Sharon leaned forward, her lips curling into a skeptical smile. "That's all very sweet, Harry," she began, her British accent cutting through the warm applause, "but let's get real for a second. You've left your family, your country, and now you're playing the victim card on every platform you can find. Don't you think it's a bit broken bar disingenuous?" The audience gasped, a collective intake of breath that seemed to suck the air out of the room. Harry's face tightened, his jaw clenching as he met Sharon's gaze. The hosts exchanged uneasy glances, sensing the conversation was about to veer into uncharted territory. Joy Behar tried to lighten the mood with a quip, but Sharon wasn't having it. She pressed on, her voice rising. "You talk about wanting privacy, yet you're signing deals with Netflix and Spotify, spilling royal secrets. How do you square that, Harry?" The question hung heavy, a challenge that demanded an answer. Harry, clearly caught off guard, took a moment to compose himself, his hands folding tightly in his lap. "Sharon, with all due respect," he said, his tone measured but firm, "my wife and I made choices to protect our family's well-being. We've shared our story to help others, not to play victims." The audience erupted in a mix of cheers and murmurs, some nodding in support of Harry, others leaning toward Sharon's blunt critique. She didn't back down, her eyes narrowing as she fired back. "Protecting your family? By throwing your grandmother, your brother, under the bus? Come on, Harry, the world's not buying it." The exchange was like a verbal fencing match, each parry and thrust drawing the audience deeper into the drama. Whoopi tried to steer the conversation back to safer ground, but the tension was undeniable, a live wire sparking between Sharon and Harry. The other hosts, sensing the moment's volatility, chimed in with their own questions, but Sharon's words lingered, sharp and unrelenting. She leaned back in her chair, satisfied with the chaos she'd stirred, while Harry's face betrayed a mix of frustration and resolve. The segment ended with an awkward transition to a commercial break. The audience left buzzing, their phones already lighting up with clips and reactions spreading across social media. This was no ordinary talk show moment. It was a clash of perspectives, a collision of celebrity and royalty that would dominate headlines for days. The internet would dissect every word, every glance, every gesture, as fans and critics alike took sides in what was being dubbed the showdown of the year. Sharon's boldness had set the stage, but Harry's response hinted at a resilience that wasn't going anywhere. The question now was how this moment would ripple through their public images, and whether either would emerge unscathed from the fiery exchange that had just unfolded on live television. As the show returned from commercial, the atmosphere in the View studio remained charged, like a storm cloud ready to burst. The audience, still reeling from the initial clash, leaned forward in their seats, eager to see how Prince Harry would navigate the minefield Sharon Osbourne had laid out. The hosts, now more cautious, tried to pivot to lighter topics, but Sharon was relentless, her eyes locked on Harry like a hawk sizing up its prey. "Let's talk about accountability," she said, her voice dripping with a mix of sarcasm and conviction. You and Meghan have made a fortune telling your side of the story, but what about the family you left behind? Your grandmother, the Queen, God rest her soul, worked tirelessly for decades, and you're out here airing dirty laundry. Doesn't that feel like a betrayal? The words landed like a punch, and the audience's reaction was a mix of gasps and scattered applause, reflecting the polarized views on Harry's choices. Harry's face flushed, but he held his ground, his military training evident in his composed posture. Sharon, I respect your opinion, but you don't know the full story, he replied, his voice steady but laced with an edge of defiance. My family's dynamics were complex long before I met Meghan. We tried to address issues privately, but when that didn't work, we had to protect ourselves. The audience murmured, some nodding in empathy, others whispering skeptically. Sharon scoffed, tossing her hair back with a dramatic flair. Protect yourselves? By writing books, doing interviews, and signing multi-million-dollar deals? That's not protection, Harry, that's a business plan. The crowd erupted again, some cheering Sharon's audacity, others booing her bluntness. Sunny Hostin jumped in, trying to mediate. Sharon, let's be fair. Harry and Meghan have used their platform to raise awareness about mental health and other issues. Isn't that worth something? But Sharon wasn't swayed, her years in the cutthroat world of showbiz giving her an edge in verbal sparring. Sure, mental health's important, she shot back, but don't dress it up as altruism when you're cashing checks for it. The rest of us don't get to walk away from our families and call it healing. The jab was personal, and Harry's eyes flashed with a mix of anger and hurt. He leaned forward, his voice rising slightly. You're oversimplifying a painful decision. Leaving wasn't easy. It cost us relationships, security, everything. But staying would have cost us more. The exchange was raw, unfiltered, and the audience was eating it up, their reactions a cacophony of cheers, boos, and whispers. Whoopi, sensing the segment spiraling, tried to interject with a joke, but the momentum was unstoppable. Sharon, undeterred, leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. Harry, you're a prince. You had the world at your feet, and you chose to walk away. Do you ever wonder if you made the right call? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you are regretting it. The question was a dagger, and for a moment, Harry seemed to falter, his eyes flickering with something unspoken. He took a deep breath, then responded, regret? I regret the pain it caused, but not the choice to live authentically. The audience roared, some in support, others in dissent, as the hosts scrambled to regain control. The clash had exposed raw truths about Harry's journey, from royal duties to a life under constant scrutiny in America. Sharon's relentless questioning had peeled back layers, revealing the complexities of his decision to step away from the monarchy. But it also highlighted her own bias, her loyalty to the royal institution clashing with Harry's narrative of personal freedom. The segment ended with an uneasy truce, the hosts promising to continue the conversation after another break, but the damage was done. Social media was already ablaze, with hashtags like #Sharon vs Harry trending worldwide, clips of the exchange racking up millions of views. The confrontation had become a cultural moment, a battle of perspectives that transcended the studio, sparking debates about loyalty, privilege, and the price of authenticity in a world that thrives on spectacle. The third segment of The View opened with a strained attempt at civility, the hosts visibly rattled by the intensity of the earlier exchange. The audience, however, was on edge, their anticipation palpable as they waited to see if Sharon Osbourne would continue her verbal assault on Prince Harry or if the conversation would finally find calmer waters. Whoopi, ever the seasoned moderator, tried to steer things toward Harry's charitable work, asking about his plans for the Invictus Games and his advocacy for veterans. Harry seized the opportunity, his passion evident as he spoke about the resilience of wounded soldiers and the importance of giving them a platform. His words were heartfelt, drawing applause from the audience, but Sharon's expression remained unyielding, her arms crossed tightly across her chest. As Harry finished, she interjected, her voice cutting through the applause like a blade. That's all very noble, Harry, but let's not pretend this is just about charity, she said, her tone laced with skepticism. You've built a brand out of being the A-rebel prince. Every move you make is calculated. You don't tell me it's all for the greater good." The accusation stung, and the audience's reaction was a mix of shock and intrigue, their murmurs filling the studio. Harry's eyes narrowed, but he kept his composure, a testament to his years of public life. "Sharon, you're entitled to your view, but you're wrong," he said firmly. "My work comes from a place of purpose, not branding. I've seen what happens when people are silenced, and I won't let that happen to me or my family." The response was a direct challenge, and the crowd roared, some chanting his name, others whispering in support of Sharon's no-holds-barred approach. Joy Behar tried to diffuse the tension with a quip about royal branding, but Sharon was undeterred, her years in the entertainment industry fueling her confidence. "Purpose, Harry, you're preaching to the choir, but the choir's not buying it," she said, leaning forward with a smirk. "You've got a mansion in Montecito, a Netflix deal, and a tell-all book. That's not purpose, that's a lifestyle." The audience gasped, the audacity of her words sending shockwaves through the room. Harry, clearly frustrated, shot back, "You're reducing my life to headlines, Sharon. You don't know the sacrifices we've made, the threats we've faced, the nights we've spent wondering if we'd made the right choice." His vulnerability was palpable, and for a moment, the audience softened, their applause a mix of empathy and admiration. But Sharon, ever the provocateur, wasn't done. "Sacrifices? You're a prince, Harry. You were born with a silver spoon, and now you're crying about how tough it is?" "Spare me," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. The crowd's reaction was electric, a mix of boos and cheers that threatened to drown out the host's attempts to regain control. Sunny Hostin jumped in, her legal background giving her words weight as she challenged Sharon's perspective. "Sharon, you're dismissing the systemic issues Harry and Meghan faced. Isn't it possible they left because they had no choice?" Sharon rolled her eyes, her response sharp and unapologetic. "Systemic issues? Please, they had every choice, and they chose fame over duty. That's the truth nobody wants to say." The exchange was a masterclass in confrontation, each side digging in, their words a reflection of broader cultural divides. Harry's composure began to crack, his voice rising as he defended his wife and children. "You can attack me, Sharon, but leave my family out of it. We've fought for our peace, and we won't apologize for it." The audience erupted, the energy in the room a chaotic blend of support and dissent. The segment ended with Whoopi calling for a break, her voice barely audible over the crowd's roar. The confrontation had laid bare the fault lines of Harry's public persona, with Sharon's relentless critique forcing him to defend his choices in real time. The internet was already exploding, with clips of the exchange going viral, pundits dissecting every moment, and fans debating whether Sharon had gone too far or if Harry had finally met his match. The showdown was far from over, and the world was watching, waiting to see how this clash would shape the narrative around one of the most polarizing figures in modern celebrity culture. As The View entered its final segment, the studio was a pressure cooker, the earlier exchanges between Sharon Osbourne and Prince Harry leaving an indelible mark on the audience and the hosts alike. The producers, sensing the viral potential of the moment, had scrambled during the break to keep the conversation on track, but the energy in the room was too raw, too unpredictable. Whoopi, with her trademark blend of humor and authority, tried to wrap things up on a positive note, asking Harry about his hopes for the future and his role as a father. Harry, visibly drained but resolute, spoke eloquently about his desire to raise Archie and Lily but with values of compassion and resilience, away from the constraints of royal life. His words were met with warm applause, a brief respite from the tension, but Sharon's presence loomed large, her silence more ominous than her earlier outbursts. As Harry finished, she leaned forward, her voice softer but no less pointed. "Harry, I'll give you Thesa, you're a good dad. Nobody's questioning that," she said, her tone almost conciliatory. "But you can't escape who you are. You're a prince, and with that comes responsibility, not just to your kids, but to the institution you were born into. You walked away, and that's your choice, but don't expect the world to applaud you for it." The audience was split, some clapping for Sharon's candor, others booing her refusal to let up. Harry's response was measured, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of exhaustion. "Sharon, I've never asked for applause," he said, his voice steady but weary. "I've asked for understanding, for the chance to live my life on my terms. If that makes me a villain in your eyes, so be it." The crowd roared, a mix of support for Harry's defiance and admiration for Sharon's unrelenting honesty. Joy Behar tried to inject some levity, joking about the royal family's drama being better than any soap opera, but the moment was too heavy for laughs. "Sharon,